Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. Is Austria getting closer to Russia? The leader of a far-right pro-Russian party is set to form a government. Other parties have failed in coalition talks. More on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest headlines. The European Commission, France, Germany and the United Kingdom responded to Elon Musk's interference in European affairs. The president of Ukraine is ready to talk to Putin, however, with a set of conditions. Colorful and crowded Three Kings Day parades took over the streets of Poland today. Austria's pro-Russian far-right Freedom Party leader Herbert Kickl has been tasked with forming the new country's coalition. Austria may soon see its first far-right-led government since the Second World War. Ovidiusz Nicieja reports.
Over 3 months after his Freedom Party won the legislative elections, Herbert Kickl was welcomed by Austria's president for talks. As the meeting took place, a group of protesters outside the presidential office displayed this sign reading, "We don't want a far-right Austria." Hundreds showed up with the hope that the door for Kickl to become the next chancellor would be closed in the last minute. But their hopes were in vain.
Herbert Kickl will report to me on the progress of these talks. Ladies and gentlemen, I did not take this step lightly. I will continue to ensure that the principles and rules of our constitution are correctly observed and adhered to.
The Russia-friendly far-right Freedom Party led by Kickl ran in the 2024 elections on a Eurosceptic anti-immigration platform. The bloc was also critical of environmental protection, and these policies appealed to many Austrians. The Freedom Party came first in September's election, narrowly beating the ruling People's Party. Despite this, it was the People's Party leader and Chancellor Karl Nehammer who was tasked with forming the new government. In the January 4th video, in which Karl Nehammer announced his failure and upcoming resignation, he said his mission was to build a bulwark against the radicals.
It is my deep conviction that radicals do not offer a solution to any problem, but only live by describing problems. That is bad for Austria, and it is bad for the people in our country.
The new leader of the Christian Democratic People's Party, Christian Stocker, is in favor of cooperating with the Freedom Party.
We will not refuse to take part in these talks, but of course, as always, negotiations are fundamentally open-ended.
Even though the Freedom Party has been part of ruling coalitions in Austria before, the country has not been led by a far-right politician since the Second World War. Herbert Kickl is on track to be the first in 80 years.
First Berlin, now London. Elon Musk, the owner of X and one of Donald Trump's most influential allies, is stirring the pot of European politics. With his outspoken support for Germany's far right and uncensored criticism of Britain's center left, Musk's attempt to shape the political landscape across the Atlantic is beginning to raise concerns in many European capitals. Paweł Trzaskowski has more.
Almost 70. This is how many tweets a day Elon Musk posts on average on his platform X. The most recent topic of his messages, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer. A national embarrassment, utterly despicable, deeply complicit in the mass rapes, prison for Starmer, and eventually a poll asking whether America should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government. Such is the language Musk uses in his foray into British politics. And as he accused Starmer on being, quote, complicit in the rape of Britain, the British Prime Minister hit back.
I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have. But that's got to be based on facts and truth, not on lies.
Elon Musk's tweets also reportedly caused a rare unity among British politicians, with Labour, Tories and Reform all privately urging those close to Trump to reconsider his alliance with X's owner. But Britain is not the only country in Musk's crosshairs. Only recently he called Germany's far-right AfD party the country's last spark of hope. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called Musk's support for right-wing extremists trolling, which should not be applauded but turned down.
And that is something we do not only disagree with, we reject it.
Media moguls have been interfering with the country's politics for a long time, says Adam Yasser, deputy director of TVP World.
It's not entirely new. You had the Rupert Murdoch of the Fox News and some of the tabloids in Great Britain for years influencing outcomes of elections.
What's new, however, is the algorithms of the new media that might promote some content over others to an unaware audience. On Thursday, Musk is to host on X a live chat with Alice Weidel, AfD's Chancellor candidate, a move that might boost her stakes in the upcoming snap elections in the country. But too aggressive promotion of this interview might violate the EU's Digital Service Act.
You should have again the possibility to opt out. So this is what we will be looking at on top of the algorithms for potentially boosting certain tweets.
All this means Europe is facing new challenges concerning the electoral and democratic processes.
10 years ago, who could have imagined it if we had been told that the owner of one of the largest social networks in the world would support a new international reactionary movement and intervene directly in elections, including in Germany? Who would have imagined it? This is the world in which we live and in which we have to be diplomatic.
And to the pressure coming from the East, as exemplified in elections in Romania, Moldova or Georgia, a very vocal, direct pressure from the US is now added.
The United States Congress votes today on the formal certification of Donald Trump's election as president. The vote comes exactly 4 years after rioters stormed the Capitol in a bid to stop the certification of outgoing President Biden. Trump, who is set to take office on January 20th, has been visited by another European ally, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Marek Steele has more.
Giorgia Meloni's visit to Trump's Mar-a-Lago, Florida residence was not just about friendly photos. The two leaders share a special understanding of several issues, including illegal migration. Trump has praised Meloni for having taken Europe by storm. The Italian Prime Minister is yet another right-wing European leader to visit Trump before he takes office as President of the United States. Experts believe that she may want to become a new bridge between the EU and the Trump administration.
She has good relations with Musk. She is being praised by Trump. So, I mean, she's well set, at least on the American end, to beat that, to play that role. She's not typical. She's not typical of European politicians, or she's not in mainstream European politics. But Musk and Trump are both looking to influence European politics.
The U.S. Congress met on Monday to formally certify Donald Trump's election as president. Preliminary results showed Trump winning 312 Electoral College votes to 226 for Harris. Trump's certification takes place exactly 4 years after his supporters stormed the Capitol building.
Trump questioned the legitimacy of the election, but he warned that he was going to do that if he loses the election. So his crowd, his voters were prepared for that, and they attacked the Capitol. A lot of them were just goodwill Trump voters or supporters and believed what Trump was saying about the election being rigged.
Outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden praised the bravery of the Capitol Police who defended the seat of the U.S. Congress 4 years ago.
But it's also due to the members of the House and Senate who, even in the face of these threats, in the threats of their life, courageously fulfilled their duty to the Constitution. They showed up and did the work. Now it's your duty to tell the truth, to remember what happened, and not let January 6th be rewritten or even erased.
Donald Trump has promised to grant clemency to some of his supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol in 2021, but it is unclear how many of the nearly 1,600 charged in the attack could be granted clemency. The U.S. president-elect will be sentenced on January 10th in his hush money case in New York, but the judge who presides over the case said he would not be sentenced to jail time, probation, or a fine. Donald Trump is the first former American president to be convicted of felony crimes.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says Europe must have a voice in any negotiations with Russia over the war in Ukraine. Zelensky said he hoped to meet Donald Trump, who has vowed to end the conflict, soon after his inauguration as U.S. president. It comes as Kyiv launched a major new offensive in Russia's Kursk region. And a key military think tank suggests that Moscow may be starting to suffer the fallout from the relentless rate of its equipment losses in Ukraine. John Todd has the story.
Footage released by Russia claims to show suicide drones trying to repel Kyiv's surprise offensive in the Kursk region. The latest land grab comes as President Volodymyr Zelensky set out his key demands ahead of any talks that might be held after Donald Trump returns to the White House on January 20th. He said Europe must be at the centre of any discussions.
We'll first come to an agreement with Trump, and only then. And I'm convinced that he can offer strong security guarantees together with Europe, and then we can talk with the Russians. Only this way it can happen. We can't just immediately sit down to talk, the three of us.
Questions remain, though, about how Trump could bring the two sides together.
There seems to be a general consensus that it's going to change. The question is, to what degree? Personally, I don't think that the Trump administration itself knows exactly what they want to do with Ukraine and the level of assistance, and they see that as a tool with which they would negotiate.
In Russia's Kursk region, a second day of fierce fighting is underway. Here, Kyiv is battling to expand its control after a lightning offensive 5 months ago.
2 days into Ukraine's military offensive in the Kursk region, it is unclear how much success it is going to have in that direction. However, one thing is clear, that Ukraine can still manage the element of surprise against Russia. The senior Ukrainian defense official Andrei Kovalenko saying the Russians are deeply concerned in the Kursk region. They were attacked on many fronts. This came as a surprise to them.
In eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region, social media images show soldiers unfurling a Russian flag in the town of Kurakova after weeks of attrition. The Institute for the Study of War says Moscow may be starting to suffer the fallout from the relentless rate of its equipment losses and could be struggling to supply sufficient tanks and personnel carriers for its frontline forces. But analysts caution that Russia is still making progress.
Russia is right now focusing on building this mass of infantry to storm, to assault Ukrainian lines in a very large number of attacks on the various fields with sometimes a very slow moves.
Experts say the prospect of talks and the possibility of freezing the front lines is fueling the war effort by both sides.
That's why both commanders on both sides are trying to be much more faster compared to the last years during this winter time to provide a better position for their own diplomats.
If talks end with a ceasefire and the freezing of current battle lines, Kyiv could end up controlling a slice of Russian territory.
Over the last few days, Moldova's breakaway Transnistria region has been plagued by rolling blackouts after gas supplies from state-owned Russian company Gazprom were recently halted. But the European Commission says it will not leave the country out in the cold and is working with Moldovan authorities to try and find a fix to the energy crisis. EU correspondent Angela Skujins has this report from Brussels.
The European Commission has confirmed that a working group has been established to support Moldova and the breakaway Transnistria region as the state grapples with another day of darkness. Now, there is an energy crisis in the region triggered by the recent announcement by Russian state-owned gas company Gazprom, which signalled at the end of 2024 it would not pump any more gas to the country due to alleged unpaid debts. This is a claim that Moldova strenuously denies. Meanwhile, the European Commission is trying to figure out ways of supporting Moldova as it grapples with this crisis. This is even if Transnistria does not want the help. This is what a European Commission spokesperson familiar with the matter told reporters in Brussels.
We understand that the Moldovan government has already offered energy and also humanitarian assistance to Transnistria, which was not accepted so far. And we encourage Tiraspol to cooperate with Chisinau to address the situation also in the interest of the local population.
The European Commission said the working group first met in December and will meet again later this week. They will discuss how support can be sent to Moldova, whether this is through the provision of generation supplies or through the streamlining of transmission networks. My name is Angela Skujins, reporting from Brussels for TVP World.
Orthodox Christians in Poland are celebrating Christmas Eve tonight. As families come together to partake in customs such as the unveiling of the nativity icon and the tradition of caroling with a star, we take a closer look at the unique cultural practices that made Orthodox Christmas a meaningful celebration in the Podlaskie region and beyond. Our reporter Sonia Agata-Biszczan visited the area to learn more.
In Poland, there are approximately 500,000 Orthodox Christians, many of which reside in Białystok and the wider Podlaskie voivodeship, in places such as the Puchły village where we are right now. According to the Gregorian calendar, they observe Christmas on January 7th, which is what prompted TVP World to come here and get an idea of some of the traditions. One such tradition is unveiling of the nativity icon in Orthodox churches on Christmas Eve, an icon that is said to be written, not painted.
Icon in lines and colors presents the message, the good news, which the gospel brings in words. In the icon, plants, trees also bow towards the newborn Savior. So everything and everyone brings something. But what's the most important in the feast and its meaning is that Christ, the Son of God, offers himself for our salvation.
Podlasia region is also known for its unique tradition of caroling with a star. On the first day of Christmas, many engage in Christmas caroling. What is more, decades ago, ethnographers observed a unique type of star that is native to this place, and in the recent years, they observed a return to traditional star decorations.
Sometimes young people will get together to go caroling with the star and show the beauty of our carols. In the region of the Białowieża forest, we have a very special caroling star, which locals refer to as Raducha. It is the star with the rainbow.
Christmas carols in our Orthodox Church reflect similarities with Polish traditions. Despite our distinct customs, our communities, living alongside one another, have mutually complemented each other.
In 2024, Polish Orthodox Church celebrated 100 years of its independence. Its autocephaly was granted in 1924 by the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Although some traditions have deep historical roots within church, ethnographers stress the importance of keeping traditions alive by introducing them to younger generations. From Puchły for TVP World, Sonia Agata-Biszczan.
Today marks the Epiphany, a Christian feast commemorating the biblical visit of the Magi to the newborn baby Jesus. 3 Kings Day parades marched through nearly 1,000 cities across Poland and abroad. This year, 600,000 crowns and 170,000 songbooks were prepared for the faithful in Poland. Let's see how it was celebrated.
Witaj, królu w żłobie, kłaniamy się Tobie.
Herbert Kickl, leader of the Austria's anti-immigration Freedom Party, is on his way to become Austria's new chancellor and its first far-right leader since the end of World War II. Meanwhile, Elon Musk made further comments regarding European governments and enraged leading politicians on the continent who were targeted by him. The latest to join the roasting, for lack of a better word, is UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. To discuss these latest developments and their possible aftermath, I'm joined by Jan Zielonka, professor of politics at the University of Warsaw. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm pleased to be with you.
So as we look at the events of today, Austrian president tasked the leader of the far-right Freedom Party with forming a coalition government. This sort of adds to the wave of instability among governments of EU member states. As, for example, the EU Observer pointed out, I quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." How could this development affect Austria and the EU?
Well, when 2 decades ago, another leader, Jörg Haider, of the same party, FPO, joined the coalitions of Prime Minister Schussel. EU tried to boycott Austria for some time, but it didn't work in the end. And today, this party is a part of Austrian political establishment. It was a few times already in the coalition government, and now they may lead the coalition, which is a trend, I'm afraid, in many countries of Europe.
So this is definitely not the only place that is dealing with the fallout. What would you say is so far the response of other European leaders, other European governments to this news?
No, Mr. Orban, for instance, is probably very pleased. I would think that Mrs. Meloni is also pleased. And these are two important prime ministers in Europe. There are other people of the same political family in other countries who are hoping to be in the positions of FPO in their own country, in Germany and France in particular. This is where we are in the present-day Europe.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think it says about the political landscape of Europe? What is it a symbol of? Because you said that this group is getting bigger and bigger as we speak.
It's not only that this group is bigger and bigger, but also center-right party, conservative parties, which used to be, more moderate, are now adopting programs of the far-right parties, and are willing to govern with them. And this is the big problem. We recently had this in Holland, for instance, where Geert Wilders was not allowed to become prime minister, but he is behind the scenes, basically leading the coalition with his party as the largest in the Netherlands.
So we were talking about the latest developments in Austria, but I would like to take a broader look at whatever's happening in terms of comments made by Elon Musk, who has control over the X platform, regarding internal politics of the European Union. A lot of people give him credit for Trump's re-election. Does Musk have an influence when it comes to EU politics and people's opinion-making choices when it comes to his recent comments?
Mr. Musk has enormous influence, if only because of the money he has. He has influence not only in America, but in other countries. He is, for instance, a great pal of Italian Prime Minister Mrs. Meloni. He mingles into politics of many European states in a rather undiplomatic way. His support for not just far-right party like AfD in Germany is controversial. He recently even told the extreme right party in Britain, led by Mr. Farage, that they should change their leader because Mr. Farage is too moderate. Well, these views are, let's put it mildly, rather controversial.
You're not the first person to mention it, I suppose, not the last. But the question that immediately comes to mind, is Poland next on Mr. Musk's list when it comes to the commentary regarding its internal politics, or this is something we do not have to even consider?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to Elon Musk, but I can imagine that for him, Poland is on the radar, and it only depends how much he will ally and with whom in the coming years. Will it be peace or confederacja, or even something new which he choose to support on the rather extreme right?
What would you say is in it for Musk? Is he somewhat fulfilling some sort of Donald Trump's agenda, or is he simply stirring the pot for his own personal gain?
Well, what is for Musk is obvious. It's always the same: power and glory. Whether he runs Mr. Trump or the other way around is irrelevant. They are now working together, and Mr. Musk is going to join administration, and we will see how it will go. One of the things you can say about Mr. Trump with certainty is that he is totally unpredictable.
How do you think that the European leaders, we heard from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the UK is no longer part of the European Union, but we've heard some commentary about, for example, the German government as well. How do you think those leaders are going to address this, and what's the way of working around Elon Musk's comments, considering this influence that he has in the social media?
Well, so far everybody is treating him like a hot potato. They're afraid to challenge him, partly because of his wealth and influence in social media, but partly because he's so close to the next president of the United States, which is the most influential country in the world, on which Europe defense depends. They are very polite so far, but they are not happy.
Definitely, this isn't a reason to be happy. You mentioned that there is a lot on the table. Obviously, the world is looking towards the upcoming inauguration of the 47th President of the United States. But why would you say that Donald Trump allows Mr. Musk to, in a way, undermine the foreign relations with, for example, EU countries? Why do you think this is happening, and does he not care that there is something happening on that front?
Mr. Trump is ideologically on one line with Mr. Musk, and he is not a great supporter of the European integration. He is critical about states like Germany in particular, and let's put it this way: the United States was not only one of the greatest supporters of European integrations for decades, it was a European power sui generis. This is no longer the case. We've seen it already under first administration of President Trump, and I would be surprised if it will be any better in this sense. Of course, Mr. Trump has to pick up his friends and enemies. He cannot go into Cold War with China and Europe simultaneously. He needs Europe for many things to accomplish his agenda. But he would like to work with Europe of Mr. Orban, Kickl, Wilders, and Meloni. And he will support that kind of politicians.
Sorry to interrupt you, but since you mentioned Mrs. Meloni, there was obviously a meeting at Mar-a-Lago taking place between the Italian Prime Minister and the President-elect. Do you think that Giorgia Meloni could actually become a bridge between the US and the European Union? What do you think her role is going to be?
Well, she's one of the most important European politicians. Italy is the fourth largest economy, is a founding member of the European Union, and her position is, politically speaking, in Italy, very strong. So far, Mrs. Meloni sided with Americans against Russia as far as war in Ukraine is concerned. A position which is not very popular in Italy, which doesn't bother with Russia and suffers economically because of disruptions of energy supplies from Russia. But I expect that Mrs. Meloni will, well, work with the new administration, or even better than the old one in Washington. And then very much depends whether she would stick to her line on Ukraine and Russia, or whether she will just take the side of President Trump.
Unfortunately, our time here on the program has come to an end. Thank you so much for joining me. Jan Zielonka, Professor of Politics at the University of Warsaw. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World, as we'll be back in just a moment with more news and features.